When I was a boy, my father, he took me to the city to see a band, a marching band. And it was at that moment that I learned, holy shit, marching bands suck. I'm gonna beat this guy to death with a hammer.
Welcome back, fellas and ladies, to another episode of Tubby Goes on a Tirade. And I am your host, the aforementioned Tubby himself. Now, if you've watched the channel before, you know that I am a huge comic nerd, and I love watching media surrounding it. In fact, my now most popular video is kind of about comics, and about how much I love them, and how much other people's shitty opinions about them make me angry. And if you've been watching for a while, then you might have heard me mention a specific Marvel show that I absolutely love, and that I truly believe is the greatest show of all time. And that show is none other than the former Netflix show Daredevil, which is now officially set in the MCU. If you somehow don't know, Daredevil was a show that ran for 3 seasons starting in 2015 that was a part of the Defenders lineup series, alongside other Netflix shows like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and the Defenders series itself. Now, these other shows, they never really lived up to the very high bar that Daredevil set up for them, which I can't fault them for because, like I said, the bar is really high. The original show is generally considered by fans to be the best MCU project to date, and is often considered one of the best, if not the best, superhero project of all time. It's really hard for me to even begin to describe what exactly made this series as incredible as it was, and incredible is honestly like an understatement. The cinematography, the fight choreography, the storylines, the characters themselves, the dialogue, I mean, it's just, I seriously can't focus on just one aspect at a time to explain why it's so amazing. It's everything about the show. It's all the bits and pieces together that just made it what it was. It also does kind of help it that it was released at a time where its only real competition was like Supergirl or The Flash or Arrow. Actually, put a little bookmark on Arrow because I do plan to make a video about that one day because that show was just fucking nuts. I mean, let's move on. It's not about that. The point is that the TV or online streaming counterparts that were considered to be Daredevil's competition were already not good, or at least not that good. But what's kind of an insane aspect about Daredevil is that it's almost kind of like a downplay to even consider those shows as competition because it's not even close. It would be more apt to call stuff like The Dark Knight or Iron Man or Winter Soldier or Logan as real competition. Season 3 specifically, which is often stated to be the best season of Daredevil, might be honestly one of the, if not the best, you know what, no, it is the best season of television. And I do want to note that it is kind of hard for me to give it these extremely high praises because I don't want it to seem like overzealous or like super ridiculous. I desperately don't want it to seem like I'm giving it very heavy hype that it doesn't deserve. But holy fucking shit, dude, like I cannot recommend it enough. If I went into the middle of Times Square, took my shirt off, and carved Daredevil Season 3 into my chest, drank 6 gallons of gasoline, ate a match, and exploded into chunks so that it spelled out, go watch Daredevil Season 3 with my blood and guts onto the street like some kind of fucked up art performance, that would still be hugely under-promoting just how actually spectacular it is. I just feel so strongly about recommending it, especially because nobody in my life who I've ever recommended it to has watched it. Not a single person. Everyone in my life just completely ignores when I tell them that they should watch something, even though I absolutely know that they'd love it. It's actually pretty fucking infuriating, but that's not what this is about. If there is anyone who is watching this video who hasn't seen it, and I don't care if you're an 86-year-old grandma named Beverly Ann Margaret who just watches Fox News and InfoWars all day, you have to watch it because you will love it. At the end of Season 3, when Matt is fighting Kingpin, after Matt has struggled the entire season, the entire show with the idea of killing Kingpin, with breaking his one rule, with breaking his oath to God to never take a life. The devout Catholic who knows that all life is sacred, but also knows that the very system that he has devoted his life to serving is broken, and that if he doesn't kill him, Kingpin will just come back, and he can only be stopped if he's dead. But he just can't bring himself to do it, and he lets out that primal scream full of rage and struggle and confusion and indecisiveness that has plagued him this entire time. He refuses to kill Fisk. He refuses to give in to what he knows needs to be done because he knows that if he does, it will destroy the one thing he values the most, his soul.
Kill me now! God knows I want you, but you don't get to destroy who I am.
And he will not let Wilson Fisk take his soul away from him. I am hitting this too much. I cannot possibly think of another word that can even come close to describing what this scene is. It is peak television, peak media, peak human condition. There is, and I believe this was my entire being, there is no other way to describe it than that. There just isn't. But like I said, the show only lasted 3 seasons, and in 2019, Daredevil, along with all the other Marvel Netflix shows, were canceled when the Disney and Netflix contracts expired. This is also around the same time that Disney bought Fox, and it not only gave them all the X-Men characters, but it gave them a majority stake in Hulu. Remember the times before the pandemic when all you really needed to get was Netflix and Hulu?
The world is changing so much.
This is also around the time that more and more news was popping up about Disney launching their own streaming service, which eventually became Disney Plus, obviously. So everybody just assumed, oh, well, they're just moving the shows. They'll have them still, but they're just moving to Disney Plus. They might even have bigger budgets, so this is kind of cool. But was it cool? You bet your tight little sweet red butt cheeks that it was not cool. It was not cool at all. In fact, it was really hot. I was dripping so wet. No AC at all. We didn't even know if the shows were still considered MCU canon yet, because it was really murky on whether or not they were in the first place. The shows would vaguely reference the wider universe here and there, and mention a character maybe from time to time. Like, they would say like the guy with the hammer, or the guy with the metal armor, or they would say like the incident, referring to like the New York alien invasion, the Avengers. There would be newspaper clippings in the background of Ben Urich's office. It was just really vague on what was considered connected at the time. And what made it more likely that the shows would be dropped from canon altogether was that Kevin Feige had virtually no control over any of the Netflix stories. At the time, I think the shows were produced by ABC Studios and the specific Marvel television division that was run by Jeff Loeb, a man who wrote some of the best Batman comics available and is simultaneously also apparently a huge piece of shit. According to Peter Shinkoda, the guy that played Nobu in seasons 1 and 2, Jeff Loeb directly forced storylines for Nobu and Madame Gao to be cut because, quote, nobody cares about Chinese and Asian people. Oh, fuck. Oh, that's a strong start. There were 3 previous Marvel movies, a trilogy called Blade that was made where Wesley Snipes killed 200 Asians each movie. Nobody gives a shit, so don't write about Nobu and Gao. I want to be very clear, that's Jeff Loeb saying that, not me. I also don't really remember Blade killing a lot of Asian people in his movies, did he? It certainly doesn't stand out as like a significant factor in any way. The only Asian character I really remember of note that was in the Blade trilogy was the guy that Donnie Yen played, and I don't think Blade even killed him. I'm pretty sure he was killed by a Reaper. But anyways, we're getting off topic. I'm pretty sure he's wrong. And also, if you hate Asian people, which, you know, already fuck you, take 2 of these and call me in the morning, shitty bitch. But maybe, just maybe, if he doesn't like Asian people, he shouldn't be in charge of anything, but also stories that center around Asian culture, like Iron Fist, for example. So fuck you, eat a dick, and lick the cheese off the tip too before you stick it in. Give it a real deep cleaning under the hood. Good God, my parents watched these videos. That was too far. Jesus Christ. Anyways, now back to Daredevil. So back in 2019, the shows were all canceled, and there was no future in sight, so fans were pretty worried. There was also apparently a contract stipulation with Netflix that said none of the characters could show up for at least 2 years in other projects after a cancellation. Why that was the case, I have no idea. But because it was right before and then in the midst of a pandemic, and everything was getting shitty everywhere else, it seemed like an extremely long 2 years of virtually no news. That is until 2021, when Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin finally showed up in the penultimate episode of Hawkeye. And then just 2 days later, Charlie Cox appeared as Matt Murdock in Spider-Man No Way Home. I remember watching that Hawkeye episode and seeing Kingpin and absolutely just losing my shit. And then 2 days later, on the release day of No Way Home, seeing Matt Murdock and losing my shit even more. There was shit everywhere. I was splashing around. And finally, these characters had returned, but there was still no news on whether the shows were canonized or whether the characters were even going to show up in future projects at all. Until a few months later, in July of 2022, Daredevil Born Again, a brand new show, was officially announced. And if you thought I lost my shit before, this time I pissed. I came. I shit. Boogers were flying out of my nose. Wax was dripping out of my ears. I was leaking out of every orifice. Holy shit, we just talked about this. Stop being gross. The show was getting some troubling news at first, though, when it was officially announced that the show was going to be a reboot instead of a continuation. It was also stated that the show was going to lose its TVMA rating and that it was going to be more PG and more family friendly, which is what quite literally nobody wanted, and I'm still fucking just flabbergasted at how they thought that was a good idea. All anyone ever wanted was just a simple continuation of the previous series, just a season 4. But for whatever reason, the head writers at the time, they didn't want that. It was also originally supposed to be an 18-episode season, which is way too many in my opinion. Now you may argue that it gives more time to tell the story, and more is always better, but also think about this. One of the great things about the original show was that it stayed focused on a single narrative, and it didn't need all these filler episodes that shows with like 20 or so episodes do. The story was perfectly contained enough in the 12-episode arc that the show had. It didn't didn't have all this pointless extra time that it needed to fill. Then we skip ahead to 2023, and they had already filmed 6 episodes with this original idea in mind until the SAG-AFTRA strikes happened, which halted production. And this is when the show was finally completely overhauled because Marvel apparently viewed the footage that they already had and just decided it wasn't working. Thank fucking
God almighty.
When these articles and all this news was coming out about the show before it came out, and I specifically remember when the reboot was announced to be an episodic legal procedural, and that they had either replaced the cast like Vanessa, or that a lot of the original cast wasn't even going to be mentioned or in it at all, like Foggy and Karen. Like, I remember my heart just sank, and I just laid in bed angry. And I don't want to just attack the people that worked on it. I'm sure they worked very, very hard to try and execute their vision for the show, but that only buys you so much grace when your vision fucking sucks. What the fuck were you thinking? You have this extremely popular and well-received show that is very successful, and you end it because of fucking money, I guess, and then you recognize enough that so many people love it that you want to bring it back, and then you just completely abandon the original project and turn it into something else entirely different. You had such a slam dunk opportunity to just rehire everybody, give everybody their jobs back, just keep making the thing that's successful. Instead of a slam dunk, you slip jumping and crack your face off the fucking floor and bust your teeth out. Thank fucking God that they course corrected, and I'm so especially glad that they brought on the writers from Loki, another extremely successful show. They also brought back Dario Scartapane, who was heavily involved with the Punisher series that spun off from Daredevil. They brought back the stunt coordinator from Daredevil seasons 1 and 2, and that may not seem like a huge deal, but if you're a big fan of the original series, then you know how important the fights are and how important it is to get that right. Apparently, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio were also very instrumental in getting this creative overhaul to even take place, because they personally talked to Kevin Feige about the new direction that the show was taking, and I gotta give them props for being able to stand up and say, no, this is bad.
Unfortunately, I don't think it would have had a chance because we were disconnecting from the original show. Charlie and I couldn't understand how we're supposed to portray these characters that everybody loves within the environment that they were putting us in. So we kept on bumping against that the whole time. Luckily enough, we have, a boss named Kevin Feige, and he listens to everything. And you can talk to him like you can anybody on the crew. Something that he listens to, like he listened very clearly, and he, did the diligence to get to the bottom of it, and it ended up the way it ended up. But yeah, we were actively talking and communicating, Charlie and I. We needed to talk to the writers constantly every day, the initial writers. We felt like their idea was amazing, but that we were going to eventually fail if we didn't right the ship a bit.
And finally, fans, especially myself, were so excited for this new show until Echo came out, which did solidify the canonicity of the original Defender shows, but also Marvel said the Born Again would have a similar feel to Echo, which is not a good thing. The general consensus on Echo is pretty mixed, but I've already made a video on it on why I don't like it and what I do like about it, so go watch that if you'd like to. But after Echo, I was still excited, just cautious. I was cautiously optimistic that the show would live up to the expectations that I now had to kind of temper because of the way that Echo portrayed these characters. But now, here we are in May of 2025, and Born Again has just completed its first season, and it was okay, I guess. If it were literally any other Marvel show, I think I would have a very different reaction. Like, if the show were literally about anybody else, if it was about, like, Moon Knight or Wonder Man or some shit, like, I probably wouldn't be so critical. But now, because we've seen what this show can be and what it has to live up to, and now 6 years later, it's not as good, it is under this scrutiny of trying to live up to that. But because Born Again is just okay, it's just fine, I'm actually not upset about it, and here's why. Remember when I said the original show was supposed to be 18 episodes and they already had 6 episodes of footage from that? When they started the creative overhaul only 2 years ago, it was cut in half from originally 18 episodes to only 9. So when the new people took over, they were already so far into production that they couldn't just scrap all that they already had. That would be like a huge waste of millions and millions of dollars and hours of work that was already put into it, and they were already on a time crunch, which is part of why the strikes even happened. So instead of being able to just completely overdo it and just make a new show, they had to creatively manipulate what they already had to make it work with a new vision. That is an extremely difficult task, and one that I don't think most people could even remotely do. So what they did was film 3 full new episodes to complete the run, and then do some reshoots here and there to at the very least make a cohesive story with what they already had and with what they were trying to do. I think that deserves a lot more praise than they actually get. And so now I'm going to do what we in the industry like to call a callback, and I'm going to do something that I did in the Echo video that I I made. And I'm going to go through and list the things that I really did like about Born Again Season 1. Start that win counter. Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio absolutely killed it with what they were given. The new Daredevil suit looks really good, even though it still doesn't have the logo. We got the return of Wilson Bethel Bullseye and John Bernthal Punisher. The Punisher Cop Anti-Vigilante Task Force storyline was really well done and really good, I think. The Kingpin Mayor storyline was also really incredible, and it did line up scarily well with real life politics, and that hopefully opens people's eyes to our current situation. The show really did not shy away from blood and gore like it was originally going to. I got really worried about that at first, and then got really worried that they were going to take it too far because of some of the news articles that I'd seen, but that didn't happen, and it was pretty well balanced. It set up a totally new storyline that we'll be getting in season 2, which is completely controlled by the creative overhaul crew. It connected with the larger MCU in a way that didn't feel like heavy-handed or forced, and it completely tied up the loose end. The fight scenes that we did get, especially the one in the beginning with Bullseye, holy shit, it felt like a genuine return to form. Fantastic all around. They took a huge swing at the very beginning of the first episode, and it had an amazing sequence, literally no notes. I gotta congratulate them on their massive balls for pulling that off. Now, I'm sure there's more things I could list, but this feels like a natural stopping point, so we're gonna go ahead and end the video. I love Daredevil. I love the original show. Go watch it. Born Again was good. It could have been better, but it's not their fault, and there's good reasons for it, and I am very excited for season 2. Although right now I'm on a huge Star Wars kick because of the Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary, which I did go see in theaters, and Andor is releasing weekly, so you know I'm hooked on that masterpiece. But anyways, that's probably going to be it for today, fellas and ladies. Don't forget to like and comment and subscribe because it really helps me out. And I've also got the Ko-Fi donation link in the description if you feel so inclined. And as always, I hope I made you laugh, I hope I made you smile, and I will see you when I do this again. Bye.